folks, my name is David de Alba. I am recording for you my volume 2 of my Finocchio Club backstage memoirs and rare recordings. I hope you have gotten my volume 1 recording because I feel the flow of the characters may help you as you listen to this CD now. I must let you know that the soundtracks that we recorded on this album and on volume 1 were songs recorded backstage at the Wings with a small stereo tape recorder thanks to the help of my dear friend and MC Carroll Wallace. So the sound is not done professionally in the studio, but it is the only thing available from those golden times. Let me tell you a very cute story about Lucian. Lucian used to love to say to any restaurant he would attend before the end of the meal to the waiter, "Today is my birthday." So of course Lucian would get a little cupcake with a candle. But one week it was for real, it was Lucian's birthday. So when Bobby de Castro, a wonderful Cuban dancer who worked at Finocchio's, found about it, Bobby decided to buy a lovely cake at Blum's, one of the finest bakeries in San Francisco, and brought the cake to Lucian. That night, Lucian was very pleased and thanked Bobby. But after the first show, when Lucian had a piece He shouted from his dressing room so everybody in the cast could hear him. "My goodness! This cake is so dry, I think Bobby De Castro is trying to poison me. In fact, I am going to call Mrs. Finocchio tomorrow morning to let her know about it, so in case I do not show up tomorrow night for work, you will know why." Let me explain to you, ladies and gentlemen, why Lucian said he had to call Mrs. Finocchio. It was notoriously known that every morning, Mrs. E. Finocchio, the wife of Joe Finocchio, would get a phone call from some member of the cast, perhaps from some waiter in the club, or from the choreographer, reporting incidents that happened the night before. Many times, a lot of those incidents were not true or exaggerated stories. And if any of those people who called Mrs. Finocchio wanted to harm somebody in the show, they could do a lot of treacherous things by telling her stuff that perhaps she would believe. Needless to say, Bobby De Castro never brought any cake to Lucian or anybody else at the club.
Happy days, happy nights, happy days are here again. Get to know you, get to know
stories about the lovely Laverne Cummings. Laverne invested a lot of money, especially in musical charts. Many of them were very complicated medleys to sing. He treated his job like Carnegie Hall. And I get a kick because once in a while an Yvette would say to me in a sarcastic remark, "David, I think you and Laverne believe you're working at Carnegie Hall." And I said back to that person, well, Finocchio's is supposed to be a world famous club, so we should treat this job as Carnegie Hall. Laverne was known for his sophistication on stage. But one day he selected two unusual songs for him to sing. One was called "Satisfy Me One More Time" and another song called "Peel Me a Grape." My wonderful friend and roommate at Finocchio's, Russell Reed, who could do some gentle sarcasm at times, was seated at the wings, and on a fourth show on a Saturday night, when Mr. and Mrs. Finocchio walked into the wings while Laverne was singing, he said very loud, "Mr. and Mrs. Finocchio, isn't it a shame that the Empress Laverne," he would call Laverne the Empress, "that the Empress Laverne is singing such raunchy songs?" Another story was that Laverne wanted to impress somebody in the audience, I think was some type of a producer who was going to attend the show, and he asked Mr. Joe Finocchio if he could hire out of his own pocket for that particular night a bass player. You see, we only had a tenor sax, a pianist, and a drummer. And Laverne thought having a bass player would add a certain extra oomph to his act that night. Mr. Finocchio said with his cute Italian accent, no, boy, no, we cannot have any bass player on top of the stage. We have too many musicians and people are going to trip over. This is impossible." And then also Mr. Finocchio added, and boy, do you think by having a bass player it is going to bring more customers to my club? And Laverne, very calmly, I understood, said, "No, Mr. Finocchio, it will not bring you more customers, but it would add more class to the show."
When the sky is a bright canary yellow, I point every cloud I ever see. So they call me a crocodile, because you can me. I have heard people run to rain and fellow. Now we're gonna be might as well be dead. I won't see a crocodile, and I can't into my head. I hear the human race, it's falling on its face. I have been very far too strong. And every whippoorwill keeps sending me a thrill, telling me a jack-race song. I could stand at this carnival of jello, on a green morning sitting in the smoke. I'm stuck like a ghost that thinks goes home, and I can't get out of my mind. Long, please, la vie. never letting go. Oh, I see what comes in. Never let me go.
I would like to tell you a story concerning some of the waiters at the club. Let's say a certain waiter did not like a certain performer on the stage. When he would approach the table where the customers were, especially right around the stage, he would be very loud by asking the customer, "How many people in your party? What would you like to drink?" and then clicking whatever glasses he had in his tray. But if for some reason that waiter did like the performer that was on stage, he would be very quiet, talking to the customers, and he would make sure there would be no clicking going on with the glasses. This bothered me a lot because if I was doing, let's say in my case, a certain complicated song like the Judy Garland's By Myself medley, that would present a problem. But if I was doing a happy-go-lucky song, like my trademark song, La Tombola, it wouldn't matter how much clicking they would be doing with their glasses, or even if some rude customers once in a while would put their feet on stage because the song was so happy that it would not matter such distractions. Finocchio was known among many entertainers in the business as the House of Eight, which obviously you know why by now, and also as the Old Elephant's Burial Ground. That was because Mr. and Mrs. Finocchio would hire older entertainers, like in Lucian's case in their 70s and 80s, who were at one time big names even on Broadway in New York. For that, I applauded the Finocchios because, as most of us know, in the United States especially, once you're over 18, you're considered old. So that part I did not mind. But the House of Hate, I did mind, because life would have been much easier if the people got along better. And no matter what you did on stage, even if the applause was wonderful, you had bravos, or the audience loved you, if somebody would instigate on the phone to Mrs. Finocchio, never those things were reported. Only the things that they thought it would cause somebody to get in trouble.
I now read a song from the play Peter Suit. Of course. I believe in doing what I can, crying when I must, laughing when I choose. I know if love were all, I would be lonely. I believe the more you love a man, the more you put your trust, the more you're bound to lose. Although when shadows fall, I wish if only someone as splendid really needed me, someone affectionate and dear. Cares could be ended if I knew that he wanted to have me near. But I believe that since my life began, the most I had was just a talent to amuse. I know if love were
At one time, I was just a guest artist at the club after my long run, and I was supposed to participate in a particular production called the Western production. Since I didn't have a song appointed to me, I asked Mrs. Finocchio if I could do a new arrangement I had of the theme song that Roy Rogers and Dale Evans used in their famous TV show. And she said yes. So that night I sang it. And after I left the stage, Cleo, who was the host and choreographer at that time, came rushing backstage and was very upset with me, asking me why I dare put that song in because it did not flow with the theme of the production. And I answered him very bluntly. I said, if this song was good enough for Roy Rogers and Dale Evans, I am sure it's certainly good for this production of yours. But of course, next day he must have called Mrs. Finocchio, because the following night, I was still a guest artist for that week. I was asked not to sing it in the production number. But I did get to squeeze it once in a while in my own act. I'm going to play for you that particular song, and you will hear that the drummer dropped a cymbal in the middle of the song practically, and you hear somebody laughing for a second.
song that Roy Rogers and Neil Evans made very famous in the 50s. Maybe you'll remember, all about nostalgia. Happy trails to you until we meet again. Keep smiling until then. Happy trails to you till we meet again. And happy trails to you until we meet again. Happy trails to you. Keep smiling until then. Happy trails to you till we meet again. David the Alba, ladies and gentlemen, David the Alba. David, thank you.
Carroll Wallace was known to be a beauty during his heydays. And even Russell Reed, who did not get along with Carroll, I don't know why, admitted that. So one night, on a Saturday night, when the club was very busy and Mr. Finocchio was backstage talking to Carroll in front of the whole cast before we went on, Carroll Wallace said to Mr. Finocchio, "Mr. Finocchio, you said many times over and over that I was the prettiest boy who has ever worked in your club in drag. Isn't it true, Mr. Finocchio? Isn't it true?" Of course, Mr. Finocchio was caught off guard, and he's mumbled like, and he left. Everybody looked perplexed and smiling. Meanwhile, Carroll had to attend the lights to get ready to go, the show to go on, and Russell Reed said to me very softly, with his special Russell Reed attitude, "David, Miss Wallace was indeed gorgeous. In fact, let me tell you a story before he hears me. When he was very young, he would go on stage and tell the audience, 'Tonight I celebrate 20 years in show business.' And people would look around and would say, 'How can that flawless face belong to an older performer?' But nowadays, David, the trouble is that Carroll Wallace is not young anymore. So when he tells the audience here, Finocchio's, 'Tonight I celebrate 40 years in show business,' people look at each other and they say, 'He looks it.'"
Yes.
story about a heater. Finocchio's upstairs in the dressing rooms was very cold, although we had a central heater. But the vets did not want the heater to go on because they claimed it was too close to their dressing rooms and it was so hot that their makeup would run like butter. But I noticed that LeBron Cummings had in his small dressing room a tiny heater, and he always looked very comfortable. So I went out and I bought a pretty nice medium-sized heater, and I brought it one night to the club and put it in my dressing room, which was very big, the dressing room I shared with Russell Reed. So it was very comfortable while I made up, and then during the first show. But after the first show, Maria Felippis, Mrs. Finocchio's sister, who, as you know, attended the cash register during the week, rushed upstairs, I guess somebody must have told her, and said to me, "David, please take this heater home tonight. In fact, stop it now. Don't use it, because we are going to have the electricity to go black on us. This is an old club, so we can't take any chances." So, next day, I called Mrs. Finocchio. I never liked to call Mrs. Finocchio because I never knew what to expect on the other end, and anyway, I had nothing to talk to her about, although we got along quite well. And I asked her, "Miss Finocchio, why they take my heater away?" And she said, "David, you know we have a wonderful heater upstairs, a big heater, so tonight when you go to work, the heater will be on." It certainly was. It was very warm. Reggie Dahl found out that I talked to Miss Finocchio about the heater, and he started shouting some foul words from his dressing room, saying, "Thanks to David de Alba, we're going to be cremated here tonight. It's so hot. How can we stand it 4 shows like this?" And he was upset the whole night long. He wouldn't talk to me much. But next day, he came all smiling, and the heater was off, and we were back to freezing again.
It was like a people from Alabama. I just came from Fairhope, Alba Backstage. I did a show there a month ago. This next song. Life is just a bowl of cherries, so live it and laugh at it all. Keep repeating is the berries, the strongest oak must fall. But when things in life to you are just road, somehow can lose what you never hold. Life is just a bowl of cherries, so live it, love it. We got to read it and think nothing of it. You can do without it. There's no two ways about it. You live and you laugh at it
One day, I was working during the daytime at my well-known hair salon in San Francisco, area the hairstylist, and my mom Tila, who was my secretary at that time, after she had retired from her long teaching position in Chicago, Illinois, got a phone call from Mrs. Finocchio, who asked her if it was okay if she and Mr. Finocchio could come to visit me at the shop. And my mom said, surely. So within half an hour from that moment, more or less, this gorgeous car pulled in front of the shop, and Mr. and Miss Finocchio came into the shop. After they greeted everybody, and I introduced them and said who they were and so on, Mrs. Finocchio said to me, "David, continue what you're doing." You see, I was doing somebody's hair, so I couldn't stop and listen to her. So continue what you're doing and just listen to me very carefully. You see, tonight we are in a bind. Carroll Wallace is not able to show up and we have no MC. So I have to teach you a few things so you'll know what to do. So she went on telling me about the lights and the sound, etc., which I knew more or less because I watched Carroll every night doing his craft. Although our lighting and sound was not the best in the world, in comparison to those beautiful shows in Las Vegas, still it was hard to do if you didn't know what to do. So they left the shop, and that evening came. I got through somehow doing the emceeing fine, and the people applauded, etc., and nobody backstage complained to me. And as I was coming downstairs, Jeannie, related the Carlos' wife, who was the cocktail waitress in the club, she said to me, "David, you should have heard Mr. Finocchio. He was bragging all over the club that David de Alba was so nice to come tonight to help us because without him we had no MC." And he kept bragging and bragging to everybody. So I said to Jeannie, "Really? I'm surprised because you never hear any compliments from the house, meaning the owners or anybody here, when one does a good job." And Jeannie, according to Carroll, he says that he feels Mr. Finocchio does not like to give compliments to any entertainer because that entertainer would get a head as big as a watermelon, and also perhaps he would ask for a raise.
Es la luz de tu mirar la que me hace soñar con dichas infinitas. Son tus besos de pasión los que mi corazón y mi alma necesitan. No hay por qué abandonar lo que para alcanzar tuvimos que sufrir. Hoy solo quiero que vengas a mí y nuestras vidas se fundan de nuevo. Volveremos a empezar y así poder gozar de nuestro por sus calles, llena de disipación. Entre sus calles se encuentran vicio y tortura a la vez. Oh, mi amor, se enamoró al compás de este vals de París. Una rica madame con su chica en los pilares. Ella le da lo que pide el cielo y después se va a chillarles. La 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 la. Oh, mi París, Plaza Pigalle. Es esta historia de amor que nació una noche allá en Pigalle. Esta es la historia del viejo París, de sus calles en los Pigalles. Vamos a cantar que la vida es alegre, fugaz, una que debe estar aquí.
Ladies and gentlemen, every show must come to an end, and I do hate to say goodbye to you now. I hope I have brought to you some of my personal experiences with some color. I do miss terribly the audiences, some of the wonderful entertainers that I had the pleasure to work with. Some of them are retired, and I do keep in touch with them. Others have passed on. I must thank also Mr. and Mrs. Finocchio for hiring me in first place. Otherwise, without that, some of these experiences, some good and some bad, I would have never known in my life. Finocchio's existed in San Francisco for 63 years and finally closed. It leaves a little hole in some people's heart, not just the entertainers who work there, but many fans who attended the club, because Finocchio was considered a landmark in San Francisco, just as big as some people consider the Golden Gate Bridge a landmark. I want to thank you once again for being part of my experience, and would like to ask you, if any of you out there find the yellow brick road, please let me know. I lost my way.
Every day, just go along, don't tell the sun down. Here's the rundown. And love comes once in a lifetime. Take each day and gather our rose by singing. Till each minute, everything that comes once in a lifetime. Think of now, tomorrow is waiting in the wings. Who knows what it brings? While the future waits, the perfect swing from day to day. In Brooklyn or China across the bay, only one comes with particular sky. Only one this precious hour from life. Only once in a lifetime to make them by so live, live, live. I will go my way by myself. This is the end of romance. I go my way by myself. Love is only a dance. I'll have to apply myself.
Hello folks, there's one more story I like to include as a bonus track because it was too good to be true what happened. At that time we were doing a production number from the play Sweet Charity called Big Spender. So one particular night the vets decided to make fun of Carroll Wallace, so they all pulled their wig hairdo into a style called the French twist. And when they arrived on stage and Carroll saw what they did, Carroll got so upset he ran to the front, which by the way we were never supposed to go through the audience in makeup and costume unless there was an emergency backstage. And Carroll approached Maria Philippis and said, "Maria, look what the vets are doing to me. They're putting their hair up, making fun of my hairdo." So Maria was very calm as usual and she said, "Carroll, there's nothing wrong with that. They're trying to give you a feeling like you are a big star, so where is the big deal? But Carroll didn't buy that. He went backstage and he was very upset about it. But meanwhile, the vets were clowning on the stage doing the song. And there is a part of the song in which, although they didn't sing because they were dancers, they were supposed to sing and say, "How about it, big boys?" Marlo Adami, my dear friend who is a wonderful dancer, decided to drop his voice to a low register and said, "How about it, big boys?" Rigidal was very upset because he claimed that Marlo ruined the number. So Reggie called Mr. Finocchio next day to complain about it. Marlo heard about the situation that happened, and Marlo convinced Mr. Finocchio to listen to the production number the way he did it. And after Mrs. Finocchio listened to it, she agreed it was fine, and she let it go the way Marlo had planned it, to much of Reggie's disappointment.
Behind the gate facade, the streets are cold and hard. The shutters lock the door, their melodies alone. A neon painted face, a meaningless and grace. The leaves no trace, their melodies alone. Was they so trying? Nothing but the same more. Why is future feeling that I never felt before? Was they so praying when there's nothing to believe? When I know my dream world is myself that I deceive. But what have I become? A woman's joyful love, a woman who is now seduced. The fool must exist somewhere, the end of my despair. A love I love to share, they're not lose alone. Where are you finding the rose? Where's that happy child that used to sing and dance? Dites-moi, pourquoi la vie est belle? Dites-moi, pourquoi la vie est belle? Dites-moi, pourquoi je m'embrassais? Et c'est bring her back today. Innocent of pure, she's the girl without a past. I'll bring her back, I'll let her find me a love to last. Find me a man who proudly take me on the avenues. Someone